Hi students, welcome to Professor Academy's UGC Net Sociology YouTube live sessions. So today's class is a continuation of yesterday's class. So in yesterday's class, we discussed about so many different concepts from this unit, which is Unit 3, Basic Concepts and Institutions. And as I said yesterday, we are planning to take this class in different parts because we have a lot of concepts to discuss. So today is the second part of Unit 3, Basic Concepts and Institutions. And since we have a lot of concepts to cover, let's start our class right away. So today also we are going to discuss about various sociological concepts. So first concept is culture, which is the most basic concept or one of the most famous concept, or we can say a foundation of sociology. So culture, what is culture? Culture refers to the shared beliefs, values, norms, customs, behaviors, and artifacts that characterize a social group. So, culture means the shared beliefs. Shared means shared in between a society, shared in between people of a society. So, culture refers to that kind of shared beliefs, values, norms, customs, behaviors, and artifacts that characterize a social group, that is culture, and it encompasses the way people think, act, and interact within a society, shaping their identity and influencing their perspectives on the world. So culture not only include these beliefs, values, artifacts, norms, customs, etc., but it also includes the way people think, act, and interact within a society. So culture is a collection, or culture encompasses all these factors, and these factors shape their identity and influence people's perspectives on the world. So culture is something which would shape people's identity and influence their perspectives on the world. Now now let's discuss about some of the famous definitions of culture given by some famous thinkers, and I have collected all of these definitions, or all of these definitions have been asked in previous questions. So still there is chance for UGC to ask these questions again. So these definitions are important because these questions has been repeatedly asked in the previous examination. So first definition of culture we are going to discuss is E.B. Taylor's definition of culture. So how did E.B. Taylor define culture? He defined culture as a complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. So, according to E.B. Taylor, culture is a collection, or it is a complex structure which includes various factors like knowledge, belief, art, morals, laws, customs, and also any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. So, culture is a collection of these whole things, according to E.B. Taylor. So, we call E.B. Taylor's this kind of approach as a holistic approach, and he emphasized the interconnectedness of various aspects of human societies. It is clear from his definition also. He's talking about the interrelation of various aspects of human societies. Various aspects of human societies. So this is E.B. Taylor's definition of culture. Now, next one is M.J. Herskovits's definition of culture. His definition is very short and simple. So, don't forget that the man-made part of environment. That's how he defined culture. Culture is the man-made part of environment. So, he's actually emphasizing or focusing on the idea that culture is created by humans. It is not a natural phenomenon. But he said that culture is something which is created by humans. And according to him, culture encompasses or culture includes the shared beliefs, values, customs, and artifacts within a society. Artifacts means material objects. So, according to Herskovitz also, culture includes the shared beliefs, values, customs, and artifacts in a society. Now, our next definition Ralph Linton's definition of culture. So, he defined culture as the sum total of knowledge, beliefs, art, morals, laws, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by humans as members of society. And he emphasizes on the broad and comprehensive nature of culture. He emphasizes on the broad and comprehensive nature of culture, and he defined culture as something which encompasses various aspects of human behavior and society. So, this is how Ralph Linton defined culture. Next one is C. Cluckhoun's definition of culture. So, he defined culture as patterned ways of thinking, feeling, and reacting, acquired and transmitted mainly by symbols constituting the distinctive achievement of human groups, including their embodiment in artifacts. So, according to Cluckholmes, culture is a patterned ways of thinking, feelings, and reacting. So, not just any kind of way of thinking or feeling, but it is. He clearly mentioned that culture is patterned ways of thinking, feeling, and reacting, and which is acquired and transmitted mainly by symbols. Is it clear? So, Cluckholm's definition actually highlights the role of patterns, symbols, and shared behaviors which shape the unique characteristics of different human groups. So, Cluckholm was actually focusing on the role of patterns, symbols, and shared behaviors. So, at first, maybe all of these definitions may look similar, but actually, when we reread it, we can see that each of them are different, or each of the thinker is focusing on a different kind of aspect of the culture. So, here in Cluckholm's, he highlights the role of patterns, symbols, and shared behaviors in his definition of culture. Now, let's move to another important concept related to culture, which is binary classificatory model, which is a model given by Levi-Strauss. Binary classificatory model. So, his Levi-Strauss's binary classificatory model is often associated with his structural anthropology. And this classificatory model involved the analysis of cultural phenomena through binary oppositions. So, how did Levi Strauss analyze culture or cultural phenomena? He analyzed cultural phenomena through binary opposition. So, he used binary oppositions to define or analyze culture. And he suggested that human societies use pairs of opposing concepts to structure and understand the world, and thereby creating symbolic meaning. So we are not we already learned about this binary oppositions and all in our previous classes, so I'm not going there again. So according to Levi Strauss, he suggested that human societies use pairs of opposing concepts, like we discussed earlier, day, night, hot, cold. So, like that, or good or evil. So, human societies use that kind of pairs of opposing concepts to structure and understand the world, and thereby creating symbolic meaning. Isn't it? It is clear when we just think about this. Like we actually use binary oppositions to understand the world. Like we can always find a binary opposite to anything we can take. Like for day there is night, so that for summer there is winter. Like that we always try to understand the world through pairs of opposing concepts, and thereby we are actually creating symbolic meaning. And also, Levi-Strauss's this binary classificatory model focuses to uncover or identify the underlying structures in cultural systems. So he was actually trying to identify the underlying structures in cultural systems by examining how different elements are related through binary distinction. So he was actually trying to identify the hidden structures in cultural systems by studying how these different elements are related through binary oppositions. Is it clear? So that is Levi-Strauss's binary classificatory model. Next concept is cultural relativism. So what is cultural relativism? It is an anthropological principle. It is an anthropological principle. And this cultural relativism suggests that cultural beliefs, values, and practices should be understood and interpreted within the context of their own culture without any external judgments based on one's own cultural standards. Is it clear? Cultural beliefs, values, and practices should be studied and interpreted within the context of their own culture, which simply means that if we are studying about some other societies or some other culture or some, we can say we are studying about, or we are just, we can say we are just talking about some other country or society, we should analyze or we should try to understood that society in context of their own culture. We should never, compare it with our cultural standards. For example, if we are talking about, or if we are trying to study about Chinese society, we should study it in their own cultural aspects. Like we should, for in order to study about a society, we should study its historical development. How did that society develop? What was its history? And what was the situations in that society? Then only we can understand why some societies have some kind of entirely different kind of practices or food habits or dressing habits and all. If we try to compare some other societies with our own society, we can never understand the reasons of that, that structural changes in that society. So if we want to study about Chinese society, we should study, or we should try to understand the history of Chinese society, or we should try to understand their culture. Then only we can, we can study why they have a particular kind of food habits, or why they follow, or why they dress in a particular way, or why they have a particular kind of uh, celebrations or rituals. But if we try to study Chinese society by comparing it with our Indian culture, we can never understand Chinese culture. Is it clear? So if we are studying or trying to understand any other society, we should uh, interpret the cultural beliefs, values, or practices of that society in the context of their own culture without any external judgments based on our own cultural standards. Is it clear? So this is the basic concept of cultural relativism. We should study a society in on the basis of its own cultural aspects. We should never compare it with our own cultural standards. Then this cultural in this concept of cultural relativism, it recognizes the diversity of human cultures, isn't it? When we study a society in its own cultural aspect, we can say that how different each societies are. Like even if we take our Indian society as an example, we can see uh, changing social structures and changing cultures in each state, and within each state we can identify various kind of cultures in each of the districts. So if we correctly follow this cultural relativism, we can understand how diverse our human cultures are. And this concept of cultural relativism focuses on the importance of approaching each culture on its own terms. Is it clear? And this concept of cultural relativism discourages ethnocentrism. What is ethnocentrism? So ethnocentrism is the tendency to evaluate other cultures according to the values and standards of one's own culture. If I try to always, evaluate, or if I always evaluate other societies on the basis of the standards of my own culture, that kind of a practice is known as ethnocentrism. Or if I always, say that my culture is better than other societies' culture, so that kind of an attitude is known as ethnocentrism. And this concept of cultural relativism completely discourages or completely opposes ethnocentrism. Is it clear? Now, it is Franz Boas who actually introduced the foundational principles of cultural relativism. So it was Franz Boas who introduced the basic principles or foundational principles of cultural relativism. Then later on, his student Ruth Benedict further developed, further developed and popularized the concept. So Ruth Benedict further developed Boas's concept of cultural relativism and popularized the concept. And Ruth Benedict's one of the most influential work in this field is known as patterns of culture. Now, to the next concept, which is Oscar Lewis's culture of poverty. So Oscar Lewis introduced this culture of poverty or this concept of culture of poverty in the early 1960s. And he developed this idea of culture of poverty through his studies of poverty and social issues he done particularly in urban Mexico and the United States. So his idea of culture of poverty was based on the studies he conducted in urban Mexico and the United States. So what is this culture of poverty refers to? So according to this concept, individuals who are trapped in poverty develop a distinct set of cultural traits, values, and behaviors that perpetuate their impoverished condition. So that is what culture of poverty is explains about. According to this concept, people who are trapped in poverty or people who are poor for a long time, they actually develop a kind of a different set of cultural traits, values, and behaviors like a different kind of values, behaviors, and cultural traits. And this kind of or this different kind of cultural traits, values, and behaviors would only perpetuate or you know increase their impoverished condition. So that is culture of poverty. And this culture of poverty is characterized by a sense of hopelessness, a lack of motivation to improve one's social and economic status, and patterns of behavior that hinder upward mobility. So it is quite easily understandable, because if we can take any person who has been poor for a long time. So for that kind of people, they had a sense of hopelessness. There was nothing for them to hope for the future or for a positive hope, but they had a sense of hopelessness, and they had a lack of motivation to improve one's social and economic status, and their patterns of behavior which hinder upward mobility or growth. So these are the features of a culture of poverty. And this culture of poverty is mostly or usually transmitted from one generation to next, because um, they never got a chance to grow or gain social and economic status or improve their social status, or they never got a chance for an upward mobility. So this culture of poverty keeps uh, transferring transferring from one generation to the next generation, like from one family to another family, and only in some rare or in a few conditions that people broke out from, or people break out from this culture of poverty. So this culture of poverty is transmitted from one generation to the next, and it creates a cycle of poverty which is difficult to break. Next, various features within this culture. So, various features within this culture of poverty is a focus on the present rather than the future, and a fatalistic outlook, and a reliance on informal social networks. So, a focus on the present rather than the future, because people in poverty had nothing to, optimistically look forward to. So they usually had a focus on the present rather than the future. And other features include a fatalistic outlook and a reliance on informal social networks. And this concept has also faced so many criticisms. Like, according to some thinkers, this concept was actually oversimplifying complex social and economic factors contributing to poverty by neglecting structural issues and systematic inequalities. So, that is the concept of culture of poverty. Now, to our next concept, which is cultural change, or we can call it as a term. What is cultural change means? So, it is a shift in beliefs, values, and norms and behaviors within a society or community over time. So, over time, cultural change refers to the change happening in a society over time in terms of its beliefs, values, norms, and behaviors. And this cultural change can result from various factors, or it may be due to different factors, like it may be due to technological advancements, or maybe due to social movements or generational shifts. Now, next concept is cultural conditioning. So, the previous one was cultural change. This is cultural conditioning. So, what is cultural conditioning? It is the process by which individuals internalize the beliefs, values, and norms of their culture, shaping their perspectives, behaviors, and worldview. So, cultural conditioning is the process through which individuals internalize, or individuals learn their learn the beliefs, values, and norms of their culture, and this would shape their perspectives, behaviors, and worldview. So we can take ourselves as an example. We learned about um, our society or our cultures and the various values, beliefs, and norms from our families, and from later on from our schools, teachers, students, and later from so many social interactions we had with other people in the society. So through a process, each and every one of us learned about our own cultures and the various beliefs, values, and norms in our culture. And this had actually, played a major part in creating our perspective or creating our behaviors and worldview. So, this process of learning about our own culture is known as cultural conditioning. And this cultural conditioning can happen through socialization within family, education, media, and other social influences. So, you know, we can say, like, these are the places from which we learn about our culture. Like, we learn about some part of our culture through socialization within our family, then through education or from school. Then we learn a lot about our culture through medias and other social influences. So these are the ways in which cultural conditioning happens, or cultural conditioning take place. Next concept is enculturation. So this is a process through which individuals acquire and internalize the cultural knowledge, values, norms, and behaviors of their own culture, which means our own culture. So it is somewhat similar to cultural conditioning. So it is also the process through which individuals acquire and internalize the cultural knowledge, values, norms, and behaviors of their own culture. And this enculturation typically occurs during childhood, isn't it? We all learned about we all learned our basics of our culture or society during our childhood from our parents or from our relatives and from our family. So, this enculturation typically occurs during childhood, and it is facilitated by interactions with family, peers, education, and the broader social environment. Now, next concept is cultural substitution. So, it is a replacement or adoption of one cultural element by another within a society. So, cultural substitution is the replacement of one cultural element by another cultural element within a society. And it can happen due to various reasons like globalization, migration, or the influence of external cultural trends impacting local practices and traditions. Is it clear? So, for example, we can take, I would like, yeah, we can take our marriage ceremonies, we can say. So, Indians had a very, each of the states of India had their own particular kind of marriage ceremonies and rituals following. But as the time progressed, or maybe due to globalization and all, now we are seeing so many kind of like inter-caste marriages or inter-religious marriages or inter-racial marriages. So now all the marriages are not strictly following any particular kind of uh, marriage rituals or ceremonies. We can see lots of improvisations in marriage ceremonies and rituals. Like that, we can see a lot of improvisations in all aspects of our society, mainly in our rituals and all. So that kind of a replacement or adoption of one cultural element by another within a society due to various reasons like globalization, migration, etc., are known as cultural substitution. Okay. Now, next concept is acculturation. So, this is the process of cultural exchange and adaptation that occurs when two or more different cultures come into contact. Is it clear? So, when two or more different cultures come into contact, there happens a process of cultural exchange. There happens cultural exchange, and there happens different kind of adaptations. So, it is known as acculturation. So that process is known as acculturation. Acculturation, and it involves exchange of cultural elements, language, customs, beliefs, and practices between groups. Is it clear? So, and this kind of interaction leads to changes in all of the cultures involved. So, we can take our Indian society as an example for this acculturation also. So, due to various foreign invasions which happened in our society, our society is actually a mixture of various cultures, isn't it? We can see English influences, we can see French influences, etc. So we can see different kind of cultural influences in our society. We can see it in our food habits or in our language. We can see so many influences of other languages. So like that, when two or more different cultures come into contact, it would result in cultural exchange and adaptation, and this process is known as acculturation. Is it clear? And it involves exchange of cultural elements, uh, like I said before, like it, it involves exchange of language, customs, beliefs, and practices between groups. Then, interaction leads to changes in all of the cultures involved. Is it clear? Now, next concept, which is assimilation. So, it is the process by which individuals or groups from one culture adopt the customs, beliefs, and practices of another culture. So, it is the process in which one culture or individuals or groups from one culture adopt the customs, beliefs, and practices of another culture, and they become indistinguishable from the members of that culture. It is known as assimilation. Is it clear? So it basically means a people belonging to a culture actually adopts or they start to follow practices of another culture. It is known as assimilation. So it is a process of a gradual integration and conformity to the dominant cultural norms. A it is a gradual process, and it is a gradual integration and conformity to the dominant cultural norms. So usually what happens is that when two kind of a dominant cultural society and a another society come into contact, so usually the people of that, you know people of that minority or the minor cultural society usually merges into, or they starts to follow the dominant culture also. So they gradually integrates into the dominant cultural norms, and this assimilation can be voluntary or it can occur under external pressure also. So people can, or a society can voluntarily start to follow another culture, but sometimes it may occur under external pressure also. So assimilation can happen in both ways, voluntary and involuntary. Next concept is melting pot concept. So this refers to a society in which diverse cultural groups blend together to form a harmonious whole. So melting pot concept means a society which is a collection of different kind of cultural groups or different kind of people from various kind of cultures, and they blend together to form a harmonious whole. This is known as the melting pot concept. And in this, according to this concept, the individuals from different backgrounds are expected to assimilate into a single unified culture. So this is melting pot concept. Now, our next concept which is counterculture. So what is a counterculture? It is a social or cultural movement that challenges and opposes the dominant norms, values, and practices of a society. Like the word suggests itself, counterculture. It is something which is opposing the culture. So it is a movement or process that challenges or opposes the existing dominant norms and values or practices of a society. And the participants in a counterculture would develop their own sets of beliefs, lifestyle choices, and artistic choices that deviate from the mainstream culture. So the participants in a counterculture develops their own ways of lifestyle, beliefs, norms, and all, and this deviate from the mainstream. And this counterculture usually emerge as a response to perceived injustices, inequalities, or dissatisfaction within the prevailing social structure. So, counterculture usually emerge as a response to the inequality or injustice existing in the current social structure or current society. And an example for counterculture is the counterculture of 1960s, and they protested against the traditional norms and they embraced alternative lifestyle. Alternative lifestyle means different from the mainstream lifestyle. So the protesters who followed the counterculture of 1960s, they embraced alternative lifestyle, music, and political ideologies. Now, our next concept is cultural system. So, what is a cultural system? It is a complex framework of interrelated elements that encompass the shared values, beliefs, customs, behaviors, and artifacts within a particular society or group. So, cultural system is a relation or it is a collection of interrelated elements which like shared values, beliefs, customs, behaviors, artifacts, etc. of a particular society, or we can say this particular or these elements of a society or these elements of a particular society constitute its cultural system. And these cultural systems include the way people communicate, the way people express themselves, how the organization of social structures, the transmission of knowledge across generations. So, cultural systems not only include values, beliefs, customs, norms, etc., but it also includes the way people communicate, express themselves, organization of social structures, transmission of knowledge across generations, etc. And these cultural systems provide a foundation for understanding and navigating the world. It helps in shaping the identity and interactions of individuals within that cultural context. Is it clear? Is it clear the context of, the concept of cultural system? Now, next concept is cultural trait. It is a specific characteristic or observable feature shared within a particular culture. See, a simple definition. It is a specific characteristic or observable feature shared within a particular culture. It can include behaviors, or it can be customs, traditions, or symbols, language, or material possessions which are distinctive to a specific group of people. So, in order to consider a particular thing or as a cultural trait, it should be specific to a group of people. That is the only, that is the only uh, thing to consider while determining a cultural trait. It should be specific, or it should be distinctive to a specific group of people. Then these cultural traits are considered as building blocks of a larger cultural systems. It is the combination of these cultural traits that create the whole cultural system. And these cultural traits contribute to the unique identity and practices of a community. So each, like we in case of human beings, we say each humans have their own personality traits, isn't it? So like that, cultural trait is the uh, particular features of a culture or a society. It would be unique to that society. So these cultural traits contribute to the unique identity and practices of a community. For example, we can say specific greetings, traditional foods, use of particular symbols. So all these are various cultural traits. Is it clear? So now to our next concept, which is cultural patterns. So cultural patterns are recurring and observable arrangements or combinations of cultural traits within a society or group. So we just now discussed about cultural traits, and that cultural patterns are the recurring means repeating, and observable arrangements or combinations of cultural traits within a society or group. So it is like a repeating pattern of cultural traits within a society. So the way different cultural elements like customs, behaviors, symbols, and institutions are organized and interconnected. So cultural pattern is basically the way which different cultural elements like customs, behavior, symbols, and institutions are organized and interconnected. And these cultural patterns would provide a framework for understanding the regularities and shared practices that define a particular culture. And then these cultural patterns also contribute to the coherence and distinctiveness of a cultural system, shaping the collective identity and social dynamics within a society. So we already said that cultural traits are unique to each society. So now these cultural patterns are actually the repeating arrangements or combinations of cultural traits. So it is this cultural patterns that makes a cultural system or a society different from others. And it would shape the collective identity and social dynamics within a society. Now, pluralism. It is the concept of coexistence and recognition of diverse cultural groups within a society. Pluralism means the existence of more than one culture in within a single society. So, because of this pluralism, there would be different cultural identities, beliefs, and practices in a society, and they exist alongside each other. Different cultural groups exist alongside each other in pluralistic societies, and they contribute to the overall richness and diversity of the cultural landscape. And this kind of pluralism would promote inclusivity, tolerance, acknowledgement of various perspectives, etc. So, pluralism is basically the existence of different cultural groups within a single society. Next concept is multiculturalism. So, it is a social and cultural policy which recognizes and encourages the coexistence of diverse cultural groups within a society. It is like pluralism. This multiculturalism recognizes and encourages the existence of diverse cultural groups within a society. And multiculturalism promotes the idea that different ethnicities, languages, religions, or traditions can exist side by side, and in turn they would contribute to the overall cultural fabric. Is it clear? And multiculturalism encourages cultural diversity, inclusivity, and exchange of ideas among various cultural communities. Now, next concept is cultural lag. So, cultural lag means the time it takes for society's beliefs, values, and norms to adapt to the technological or cultural changes. So, cultural lag means the time which the society takes to adapt to its changing conditions. So usually maybe because of the advancements or developments happening in the technology, science, or other aspects of culture, usually or often outpace the development of corresponding social norms and values. Or we can say social norms and values would take some time to catch up with the happening advancements or shifts in technology and other aspects of culture. And this cultural lag between this cultural changes happening and the you know lagging behind nature of these norms and values, this would lead to periods of adjustment and tension. So during that kind of periods we people need to do adjustments, and it would lead to a situation of tension in the society. Is it clear? Now, next concept is cultural diffusion. So, it is the spread of cultural beliefs, practices, customs, and innovations from one society or group to another. It is the spread of cultural beliefs, practices, customs, and innovations from one society or group to another. So, the word diffusion itself means that moving from one to another, or transferring or spreading from here to there. And this cultural diffusion occurs through various means, like it can happens through trade, migration, conquest, or exchange of ideas. And cultural diffusion would leads to the adoption of elements from one culture by another, and this would leads to the enrichment and diversity of societies. So through cultural diffusion, societies would share their cultural aspects or different features of their culture with each other, and this would in turn leads to the enrichment and diversity of societies. Next concept is cultural innovation. It means the introduction and adoption of new ideas, practices, or technologies within a cultural context. So I just have to say all these concepts are really easy to understand, because the title or the term itself means, or just by reading the term we can remember what this actually means. For example, in this case, cultural innovation, the word innovation itself means the introduction of something new. So in case of cultural innovation, it is the introduction and adoption of new ideas, practices, or technologies within a cultural context. So this includes artistic expressions, technological advancements, social practices, changes in cultural norms, etc. And this cultural innovation would reflect capacity of a society to generate novel solutions. Novel means new. So this cultural innovation reflects the capacity of a society to generate new solutions, adapt to evolving circumstances, and create meaningful additions to its cultural landscape. So now let's move to our next concept, which is status. What is status in sociology? So in sociology, status means a person's social position within a group or society. And the status is based on various factors, or it is decided upon various factors like occupation, education, ethnicity, or any other characteristic feature that influences an individual's standing in the social hierarchy. And there are actually two types of status. So, status can be ascribed or achieved. Ascribed statuses are one which are assigned at birth. Like maybe This kind of ascribed statuses get transferred from one generation to other, from family to family. But there are other kind of status which is known as achieved status. So this kind of status is attained through individual actions. So different two types of status are ascribed and achieved. And sometimes individuals occupy multiple status simultaneously. And such a kind of situation is known as a status set. Is it clear? For example, we can take a person any person. Maybe they will have a particular position in their family, then have another status role in their society. So that person is doing or occupying multiple status simultaneously but at the same time. So that kind of a situation is known as a status set. Now, another concept of status group by Max Weber. So, uh, the status group given by Max Weber, it refers to a social group characterized by a shared prestige or social honor, often based on a specific lifestyle, heritage, or social identity. So, status groups are a social group which have a shared prestige or social honor, which is often based on a specific lifestyle, heritage, or social identity. And Weber actually defined the status group in a non-economic criteria. So he actually described or defined status group through cultural, ethnic, or religious distinctions. And the members of a particular status group, they share a sense of common identity and mutual recognition within a society. And Weber considered status groups as one of the key components shaping social structure. So that is status group proposed by Max Weber. Next is quasi group proposed by Ralph Dahrendorf. So he introduced the concept of quasi groups in order to explain transient and situational groupings that form in response to specific issues or interests. So, what is this transient and situation? This means spontaneous or temporary groupings which form as a result or response to specific issues or interest. They are fluid associations. They are not a concrete permanent association, but they are fluid associations, and they emerge temporarily around particular goals or challenges. So this kind of quasi groups usually emerge in order to achieve a particular goal or challenge, or it usually emerge as a response to any kind of issues or for achieving any kind of common interest. And in these quasi groups, individuals come together based on shared interest or concerns and may disband once those issues are addressed. Is it clear? So, such kind of quasi groups, individuals come together based on shared interest or concerns, and they may disband once those issues are addressed. And this kind of groups provide a framework for understanding the flexible and evolving nature of social associations. Is it clear? So these are more temporarily kind of groups which form in response to specific issues or interest. And they may disband once those issues are addressed. Next concept is status sequence by R.K. Merton. So the status sequence means societal expectations and norms regarding the order in which individuals should achieve certain social statuses throughout their lives. So this status sequence basically means in all of our societies there are some, there are some beliefs or there are some set rules that a person should go to school at this age. They should go to complete their studies by this age or by this time. They should get married within this particular age. They should have babies within this time period, isn't it? So our society had already created some kind of social expectations and norms according to or regarding the order in which individuals should, achieve certain social statuses. For example, uh, one thing we always you or we usually hear about is that men has been asked about, like, when some men decide to get married before they have a job, then people would ask them, you are a man, you don't have a job, then why are you getting married before getting a job? So society already, expect males to get married only after getting a job. So that are some social expectations which our society already had in their mind. So the status sequence means those social expectations and norms in which individuals should achieve certain social statuses throughout their lives. And societies often prescribe a sequence of life events and social roles that individuals are expected to follow. For example, as I said earlier, completing education, getting a job, marrying, having a children, isn't it? And the society expects us to do all this in a particular sequence. And if someone do something wrongly, or someone, have children before marriage, or get a job, marry before getting a job, then the society would question that people. So that is known as the status sequence. The next concept is role. So roles are set of behaviors or expectations and responsibilities associated with a particular social position or status within a society. So those are set of behaviors, expectations, or responsibilities related to a particular social position or status within a society. So roles just means how individual sorry. So role means how individuals in a position are expected to interact with others and fulfill their duties. Now, another concept of role model proposed by R.K. Martin. So, a role model is someone individuals look up to and emulate. So, basically, it means like what we think it is. It is role model. So, it is someone individuals look up to and emulate due to their success or adherence to societal norms. If someone becomes success, or they follow societal norms without any failures, then the society would look up to that individual as a role model. But this won't happens in case of every people. So sometimes the social expectations and cultural goals might not always align with available, and this would leads to strain, which means that maybe some people become unable to, follow these kind of, so cultural sequences or role sequences and social expectations, and this would leads to strain in society. But role models are people who have already successfully navigated this strain, and they stand as an example for others to follow in achieving socially acceptable goals. So, role model, concept of Merton, role model literally means the term itself, role model. Then next is theory of social structure by S.F. Nadin. So, in this theory, he defined, or Nadal defined, roles as modes of action allocated to individuals by the norms of society, and it lies at the very heart of social structural analysis. So, according to him, roles are modes of actions allocated to individuals by the norms of society, and this roles lies at the very heart of social structural analysis, or roles are very important in social structural analysis. And in order to describe social structure, according to Nadal, one must consider three aspects of roles. First one is the allocation principles that provide actors with roles. Second one is the degree to which given roles have authority over other roles, which means the command over action aspect. And the third one is the degree to which given roles command the various resources and benefits of the social system. So, according to S.F. Nadal's theory of social structure, in order to describe social structure, one must consider these three aspects of roles first. Now, to our next concept, which is role distance by Erving Goffman. So, this role distance refers to the detachment of the performer from the role he or she is playing. It is the distance or detachment of the performer from the role he or she is playing. And it makes an important distinction between the existence of expectations concerning role performance of a role and individual commitment to that role. So here, role doesn't mean someone playing in a drama or anything, but role means our social roles. And in sometimes we have to play some roles which we are not interested to do, isn't it? For example, we can say someone who got forced to get married, or a woman who got forced to get married. So in that situation, he have to play the role of a daughter-in-law or a wife without any attachment to that role. So that kind of situations are known as role distance or the detachment of the performer from the role he or she is playing. Next is role taking by G.H. Mead. So, role taking is the process by which a person mentally assumes the role of another person or group in order to understand the world from that person's or group's point of view. So, role taking, sounds similar to empathy. It is the process by which a person thinks about or mentally assumes the role of another person or group in order to understand the world from that person's or group's point of view. For example, children trying out different roles while playing. While playing, we used to play or we used to be like mother, teacher, doctor, shopkeeper, etc. So, in all that time, we were actually doing this role taking. We were actually assuming the role of another person and we were trying to understand the world from that person's point of view. So, in this process or stages of role taking, firstly, people would take the role of others. That is basically known as role taking. And why would people do this? People would take the role of others, hoping to ascertain the intention or direction of the act of others. Then, secondly, the person begins to construct his or her own roles, which is known as role making. And this role making is, you know, role making helps to anticipate other individuals' responses. Then, finally, the person plays his or her particular role, and it is known as role playing. Now, next concept is reference group by Hyman. So, reference groups is a social group that an individual uses as a standard for evaluating their own beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. So, reference group is a you know standard group or it stands as a reference point for individuals to compare or evaluate their own beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors with. And this reference groups act as a point of reference for individuals to gauge their own identity and assess societal norms. And this reference groups can be two types: aspirational and associative. So, aspirational are groups which an individual aspires to join, which a group which the individual wants to join in the future. It is known as aspirational groups. Then there is associative groups. So that are the groups which the individual is already a member of or the groups an individual belongs to. That is known as associative. So reference groups can be two types: aspirational and associative. Now, next concept is role strain. So, role strain is the tension or difficulty experienced by an individual when trying to meet the expectations associated with a single role. When a person tries to, meet the expectations or expectations already set by the society based upon a role, the tension or difficulty experienced by an individual is known as role strain. And it occurs when the demands and expectations within a particular role are conflicting or overwhelming. And It would be challenging for an individual to fulfill their duties effectively. And this role strain would eventually lead to stress and strain in attempting to meet those demands. So this is role strain. Next concept is role conflict. So this is when an individual experiences incompatible demands or expectations stemming from different social roles they occupy. It is known as role conflict. When requirement of one role clash with those of the another, when a person is doing more than one roles in a society, and when the requirements of one role clash with the requirements of other role, the then the person faces a challenging situation, and that kind of situation is known as role conflict. For example, conflict between expectations of work role and family role. Is it clear? So now to our next concept, which is role transition. So it is the process of moving from one social role to another. Process of moving from one social role to another. And this role transition is often accompanied by changes in responsibilities, expectations, and behavior. So when we move from one social role to another, there will be there will happen a change in our responsibility, expectations, and our behaviors. And this role transition involves a shift in an individual's status within the society. So when the social role changes, the social status of that person in the society also tends to change. And this role transition also can be voluntary or involuntary. For example, we can call it a voluntary role transition, like choosing a new career. It is a voluntary process and it denotes a role transition. Then it can be involuntary. For example, like sudden changes in family dynamics or employment status. Then during that kind of situations, the person have to, you know, change their role unwillingly or involuntary. So this role transition can be voluntary or involuntary. Next concept is role set. So role sets are an array of roles associated with a particular social status or position held by an individual. So it is basically a set of roles related to a particular social status or a particular position held by an individual in the society. And each social position comes with a set of expected behaviors, rights, and obligations, isn't it? In our society, each social position has its own expected behaviors, rights, obligations, etc. For example, the social position of a father, the social position of a mother, a daughter, or like of a doctor or a teacher. We can say anything. Each of the social positions in our society has a set of expected expected behaviors, rights, and obligations. And this expected sets of these aspects are known as role set. So the role set is in a role set, all the roles are connected to that specific status. All the roles would be related to that social status of that person. Next concept is role expectations and reward and punishment. So, what are role expectations? Role expectations are anticipated behaviors, obligations, and responsibilities associated with a particular social role or position. So these are the particular kind of roles which a society expects someone in a particular position or social role to do. That is known as role expectations. And these role expectations are shaped by societal norms, values, and cultural influences. And in this role expectations, there is a concept called sanctions within this role expectations. So, sanctions are the responses or consequences that the individuals might face based on how well they meet or deviate from these role expectations. So sanctions are the responses we get when we, you know, when we do or when we play our roles on. It is the sanctions are based on how well we meet our role expectations. So there are two types of sanctions. First one is positive sanctions. So it is known as reward. Then the second one is negative sanctions. It is known as the punishment. So positive sanctions or rewards are when individuals fulfill or exceed role expectations. When individuals fulfill the role expectations of society, then they will get positive sanctions or reward. For example, we get praise, recognitions, promotion, or other forms of approval. So these are examples of positive sanctions or rewards. And this positive sanctions would reinforce and encourage adherence to societal norms associated with their role. So when a person receives this kind of positive sanctions, they would tend to more stick on to the societal norms associated with their roles. Next is negative sanctions. So this is caused by deviation from or caused by failure to meet the role expectations. For example, if we fail to meet our role expectations, we would get criticism from people or social disapproval or even formal consequences like demotions or legal repercussions. So it is known as negative sanctions or punishment, and it serves as deterrence to discourage behaviors that go against established role norms. So, next concept is gender appropriate roles. So, as the title itself suggests, gender appropriate roles are societal expectations and norms regarding the behaviors, responsibilities, and activities considered suitable for individuals based on their gender. So, based on the gender, society has already decided some kind of behaviors, responsibilities, and activities for each of the genders. So that kind of a societal expectation is known as gender appropriate roles. And these are culturally constructed. These gender appropriate roles are culturally constructed and vary across different societies and historical periods, isn't it? So gender roles of some other society might be different from the gender roles in our society, and it would also change by changing time. Next, okay, now let's move to our next concept. So I will complete or finish this fastly. So next concept is community. So community is a group of people who share common interests, values, and social interactions within a specific geographic area or through virtual connections. So here you have to notice that within a specific geographic area or through virtual connection. So geographic area is not mandatory for a community. It can be within a specific geographic area, but at the same time, it can be also through virtual connections. So communities are a group of people who share common interests, values, and social interactions. So they can be within a specific geographic area, or this can be through virtual connections. And this community involves a sense of belonging, mutual support, and interaction, contributing to the individual's social identity and cultural cohesion. So, communities have a sense of belonging, mutual support, and interaction. An example for community, we can take neighborhood, online communities, religious congregations, academic societies, workplace teams, etc. So, these are all examples for communities. Now, R.M. McIver and C.H. Page defined community as a community is an area of social living marked by some degree of coherence. So, this is the definition to community given by R.M. McIver and C.H. Page. Next concept is little community by Robert Redfield. So, little communities are a small scale social group which is characterized by strong interpersonal relationships, shared cultural values, and a sense of collective identity. So, little communities are small scale social groups with a strong interpersonal relationship, shared cultural values, and sense of collective identity. And they are very much different from larger, more complex societies. Little communities are entirely different from larger, more complex societies. And these little communities are based on face to face interactions and a high degree of social solidarity. So, these are the features of little communities. They have a face to face interactions and they have a high degree of social solidarity or social unity. And individuals in a little community are closely connected to each other and they have a deep understanding of each other's needs, interests, and preferences. Is it clear? So this is the concept of little community by Robert Redfield. So that's all for today. Now let's look at some of the questions from the parts we studied today. First one is, who defined culture as the man-made part of the environment? Man-made part of the environment. It is M.J. Herzkovitz. Next is, who introduced the binary classificatory model of culture? Answer is Levi-Strauss. Then, what was Ruth Benedict's influential work on culture? It is Patterns of Culture. Next question, who introduced the concept of culture poverty? Culture of poverty. The answer is Oscar Lewis. Then, coexistence and identification of diverse cultural groups within a society is known as pluralism. Then, two types of reference group, which are they? Aspirational reference group and associative reference groups. So that's it for today. I hope it was a useful session for you. And if you're finding these classes useful, you can actually join our UGC Net course of Professor Academy. The admissions are open now, and the classes will be starting soon. Not in YouTube Live, but the classes will be on our another platform. So if you are interested, you can join our sociology course, and in that sociology course, we will be uh, doing so many previous year questions. Then there will be MCQ series, test paper series, and all. So it is like a whole package. So it would be very much useful for you if you really want to crack your net in the upcoming session. And if you join now, you will get a 4.5 month time so that you can prepare very well. So try to join as soon as possible so that you won't be missing any classes. And thank you for joining today. See you in the next class. Good night.